Welcome to Lead Pods, the official leadership podcast from USMB for pastors and church leaders, where our goal is to increase our impact together.
Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 121 of the USMB Lead Pods. My name is Matt Ersman, and really glad to have you with us today. So I don't know why it took us nearly 5 years and 121 episodes, but today we're finally talking to my pastor. We're talking to Pastor Brent Warkentin today. Many of you know Brent. Brent has been in church leadership in some capacity for 40 years now. He's been the lead pastor at Ridgepoint Church in Wichita for just over 20 years. And today we're diving into an important topic all about sermons. How do you preach? How do you prepare to preach? How do you craft a good sermon? I know many of you listening do this on a regular basis, but Brent has obviously prepared hundreds of sermons, and he preaches 3 times a week most of the time. Brent is a very gifted communicator. He does a great job preaching, and I say this in the episode, but at Ridgepoint, I've been there almost 11 years now. I hear just about every sermon 3 times. There's not very many people I would enjoy listening to 3 times a week, every week for 11 years, but Brent is one of them. Brent is a gifted communicator. Our church is lucky to have him, and I think he's honestly a gift to the MB denomination as well. And I'm not just saying that because he's my boss and he's probably listening to this. But I do think for those of us who prepare sermons, we have a lot that we can learn from Brent. He had some really good, helpful things that we can all learn. So we'll take a quick break to hear from this week's sponsor, and then we'll hear how to craft an effective sermon with Pastor Brent Warkentin.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Mennonite Central Committee. Join the Great Winter Warm-Up. This winter, compassionate people like you are giving the gift of warm comforters to those in need around the world. Help MCC meet our goal to collect 7,000 comforters by the end of March by donating comforters or sponsoring one. Learn more at mcc.org/comforter.
All right, my friends. Well, today I have the honor of interviewing and having a conversation with one of my friends who happens to be my boss. None other than Pastor Brent Warkentin is joining us today. So, Brent, I don't know what it says about us or about you that it took us 5 years to get you on Lead Pods, but you're finally here.
Probably a good decision.
You probably made it to the big time. So welcome to Lead Pods, Brent.
Thank you.
Good to have you on. So, Brent, I know obviously a lot of people listening will probably know you. They probably have known you for a while, but some people may not know you very well. I've heard you say before, Brent, that you are as MB as they come, which I think is probably true. What, third generation MB pastor, right?
Correct.
So let us know. You've got all the credentials. So if people don't know you, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, Brent?
Well, thanks. My name is Brent Warkentin, and I grew up a Mennonite Brethren pastor's kid, Mennonite Brethren missionary kid. I went to Mennonite Brethren colleges and a Mennonite Brethren seminary. I've drank the Kool-Aid for sure. Married to my wonderful wife for now it'll be our 40th anniversary on June 1st, Joan. And we have 2 daughters who are both married and 4 grandkids. And this is now my 40th year in church work and a few years in youth ministry, and then 15 years at a previous church in Buhler, Kansas. And now we're in our 20th year here at Ridgepoint in Wichita.
Nice. Very good. Well, thank you for being on, Brent. And today we're tackling, again, I'm kind of surprised we haven't talked about this before, but today we're just going to talk about sermons and preaching and how do you do it since you've been doing this for a while. Everybody who's listening, who's a pastor or a teacher, probably has a slightly different process, and we might even have a few different definitions of what a sermon even is, maybe for some people listening. So I don't know, where do you want to start, Brent? How do you preach? How do you prepare a sermon?
So one of the things I still try to remember literally weekly is the sacredness of the task. So when you do something thousands of times, it's normal to take it for granted and to think it's just a normal thing. And in one sense, there are so many people teaching Sunday school lessons in small groups and sermons that it does become maybe non-threatening. It becomes a little easier, but I do try to remember this sacred task. And so I'm not superstitious, but we all have our routines of how we approach something. And so every week that I preach, I have some kind of a little prayer that in my heart reflects the sacredness of the task and my inadequacy. And so I have different ways of saying that, but virtually 100% of the time, I step up just to talk, and I want to remind myself that even though I've done this thousands of times, it is a sacred privilege. And so I just somehow say, God, in spite of me, I'm just me, do you and do your stuff. And of course, you got 2 Timothy 4, preach the word in season and out of season with patience and teaching. James says, not many of you should be teachers, And so that's critical for me. In the actual sermon, that takes 12 seconds, okay? But that's an important part for me. Yeah, I've thousands of Sunday school lessons and Bible studies, and here at Ridgepoint, I preach 3 times every Sunday that I'm up there, and so it's not like it's a new thing, but it is a sacred privilege. And so I don't want to screw things up. I know that I will be accountable to God for what I teach. And I know that because I'm not perfect, I've misled, I've misinterpreted, and sometimes I don't even know that I've done it. And so that puts a legitimate, a reasonable fear, but it's a good thing. So that's how I'd start. If you tell me about your preaching, the first thing is walk in humbly, walk in dependent, and walk in recognizing that you're just you. So that's the first thing.
No, that's good. I think that's a great place to start, and a very humble place to start. So no, again, everyone listening probably has a different process, but let's start with how far ahead in advance do you plan, and do you work on 1 week at a time? Or are you kind of jotting notes, looking down a couple months, or what's your long-term, medium-term, and short-term preparation?
Well, it's not like I wouldn't be honest on this podcast, but I'm being interviewed by someone who is part of the system here at Ridgepoint, and so I certainly can't fudge at all. Ideally, I plot out 12 months of sermons, a year's sermons. Ideally, in October of the previous year, I'll try to script out, and I'll say, okay, we're going to mark for 8 weeks, and we're going to have a series on anger, and we're going to have a series on anxiety or emotions, and then we're going to look at Hebrews. And I do try to have a balance between Old Testament and New Testament, not a 50-50 balance, but I want to have a balance between Old Testament and New Testament, the whole Word of God, and I want to have book of the Bible and topical. We're going to preach the word no matter what. Okay. Yeah. So we preach the word when we do a series on emotions. And we preach the word when we work our way through Mark. But ideally, I plot that out ahead of time. Realistically, there are a lot of adjustments when we meet as staff, and we got to pivot here and pivot there. I generally get a couple of sentences or a few bullet points for the whole series before the start of the series. So right now we're doing 15 weeks in Mark. And so I've at least got a few bullet points for all 15 weeks before the 15 weeks starts. But I say this with a smile, and I'm not trying to be facetious, but the Holy Spirit just doesn't speak to me much sooner than the week of the sermon.
Right.
And I have always been envious, Matt, of these preachers, teachers, pastors who have a brain that I don't have, that can write out, the core of their sermon is 3 pages, and it's 3 months in advance. And then this one always gets me. The people who are so organized that they can get an outline printed by Wednesday of the week of the sermon, and it's put online or whatever. And so how do I start? Well, we try to plot out the whole year. I do give a few bullet points for each of the sermons in that series beforehand. But no, it's never been my strength to give lots of details long in advance.
Yeah.
So, I try and work hard at balance between Old Testament and New Testament, topic and book of the Bible. I know there are these preachers, and I respect them, who are what they call expository. They expose and they go verse by verse, and they go 2 years in Romans. I've never come close to that. It's just not my personality. I'm a bit too scattered, and so it's a long series that we're in right now. It's 15 weeks in Mark, and that's about a record for us. But I can say with confidence that we're preaching the word. We aren't going through every verse in Mark. We're skipping a chapter here and there. But I do try and get Old Testament, New Testament, topical, and book of the Bible. In our culture, in our Wichita for sure, we just need to be relevant. And so we have to speak on mental health. We have to speak on, relationships and address hard issues. And so we will have topical series as well.
Well, on that, I wonder if you could expand on that a little bit more, because I'm sure some people listening might, like you said, only do books of the Bible or whatever. Some people might only do series, right? And they don't really do a straight book of the Bible series. Do you think, has your stance on that changed over time? Have you always been kind of a 50-50 guy, or what are some of the pros and cons of both?
I think I've balanced the two consistently. That doesn't mean correctly. It just means consistently over the years. The pro of going through a book of the Bible is it can keep a pastor preacher from being on a soapbox. So if their soapbox is prayer, or their soapbox is greed or generosity, or their soapbox is purity, or whatever their soapbox is, we all have those things that we're passionate about. If you go through a book of the Bible, it can keep you more objective. You have to just say whatever's in Mark chapter 3.
Yeah.
So that's a pro of going through a book of the Bible, is it keeps you a little more objective and you don't get on your soapbox. The con of going through a book of the Bible is you may have a fair number of weeks that don't speak relevantly to a large number of people sitting in the big room. And so a benefit of a topical series on temptation or forgiveness or anger or whatever is you hit people where they have a need. I heard the other day, Matt, this phrase, I'd never heard it before. Our preaching ought to be more like Tylenol, not vitamins. So when you take vitamins, you don't expect changes tomorrow or next week. You take vitamins for the long haul health. Okay.
Right.
With Tylenol, you should expect to feel something different in 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And so that's the relevancy of, that's what should be the relevancy of sermons.
Yeah.
Is it should ease a pain. It should answer a question in 20 minutes. And I like that. And topical sermons have I don't want to say better, but they certainly have a chance to be the Tylenol for people who have pain, questions, real life issues. And you hit them right there and they feel better by the time they leave. Not that that's the purpose of church, but.
Right. Yeah. I got you.
It's kind of an intriguing statement, isn't it? Tylenol,
I like it.
vitamins.
Yeah, that's good. I haven't heard that before. So speaking on that, I think it seems like most churches now do basically 4-week series. Like whatever they're doing is 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Do you feel kind of a pressure to do that, or is that kind of a good length for your attention span, for Ridgepoint's attention span, or how do you handle that?
I tell, and it's true. You know this, Matt. You know me. I've never won a cool award in my life. I'm just awkward, Brent. I'm genuine. I love the Lord. I love people. I'm a decent communicator, but I've never been the kind to just serve out 4-week topical sermons. And maybe I'm too old for that. Maybe I'm not edgy or hipster enough. But I really do lament that so many churches are contributing indirectly, certainly, to the biblical illiteracy of
Mm-hmm.
the North American church,
Yeah.
because it can become just a self-help. I want to fix all your problems, and they
Mm-hmm.
take the latest movie series or the latest. Everyone's like, I will never wear, and I love watching football. Go Chiefs!
Mm-hmm.
I love watching sports, but like that's just not me to wear a football uniform 4 Sundays in a row and have a series on be a team player,
Yeah.
And so we do plenty of topical series, and we've hit some really controversial subjects and tried to be, as we just said, Tylenol.
Mm-hmm.
That is a relevant, the Word of God can speak to your need today. So we do that. But no, I do lament that some churches have, in my opinion, swung the pendulum too far toward only topical.
Yeah.
That's just me. There's no judgment. I don't have a judgment that they're not preaching the Word. I think they are. It just contributes toward a biblical illiteracy.
Yeah.
Let's choose a book or two.
Yeah.
And let's walk through them.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. Okay, so I want to hear about your process, Brent. So let's say, let's just we can take this Mark one as an example if you want, or just any series that you've done recently. So you've got this series on Mark, 15 weeks. Where do you start? How do you decide what to cover, what not to cover? What resources do you use?
So we'll just go an assigned passage, or I guess it could be a sermon on anger and controlling your tongue or something. But yeah, I will sit next to Jesus. He's always sitting next to me, and look at my computer monitor, and I'll dream if it's a topic of what do I want to say. I usually don't just immediately go to Google and say, what's the Bible say about anger? So I like to just think with a blank sheet of paper. I have never prepared sermons like I was taught to prepare sermons in seminary. In seminary, I was taught that you ought to have a passage, you study it, you come up with your 3 main points, you write those out, and then you come up with your hook 'em. You got to hook 'em with the introduction, something humorous or interesting, and then you write your conclusion. Like, I've never done that. It just doesn't work for me. So when they assigned me to turn in my 3 main points before I wrote this, I just wrote the whole sermon ahead of time, found the 3 points and turned them in. But I just don't, it's not my wiring to sit down and on the front end, the first thing is say, what are the 3 main points I want? If I'm on anger, I just sit there and think and pray, and then I have to type the first sentence. I say, good morning. Today we're going to talk about anger. I'd have to type that out. Yeah, I'll read commentaries. I'll Google and do other research on a subject. But the way I prepare a sermon is I have to just start from the beginning. I just don't come up with an outline ahead of time. And that's, I don't know, tell me I'm a terrible preacher, but that's just never been my style. So I do write out my sermons word for word. I've for 35, 40 years now, but I write them out word for word. During the writing process, I will fine tune what my main points are, but I write it out word for word. That's just my deal. I can't remember what I had for breakfast today, but the Lord has blessed me with an ability to memorize. And I've often said, don't wear Saul's armor. You got to be yourself. Don't try to. I'll never be cool Craig Groeschel. I'll never be suave Andy Stanley. I'm just Brent. And people smell fake from a mile away. And it's always better to be yourself and to be real and to be authentic. And so I have to be me, not only the way I prepare my sermon, but in how I deliver it as well. And so in my preparation, I write it out. It usually takes me, Matt, I sometimes am envious of preachers who seem to prepare sermons a lot faster than me. And I've been doing this for a lot of years, and I still feel like I'm not very fast at it. That's just okay. But it will, on a good week, it will take me 8 hours, 9 hours to write the sermon. And when I say that, that's the study, and it's an hour here and 30 minutes here and an hour there scattered throughout the week. But 8 or 9 hours on a good week, 10, 12 on a normal week. But then I practice my sermon out loud and I time it. I just scribble the start time and the end time, and I'll practice it once on Saturday morning, which is kind of I come in on Saturday mornings and I finish it and practice it out loud. And then I'll practice it on Sunday morning 3 times. So when I preach on Sunday, it's my 4th time to preach it out loud. And so, yeah, I do research. Yeah, I look at commentaries, but I write my sermon word for word and I practice out loud. I've told people that it helps you catch wasted words when you read it out loud. You even catch wasted words when you speak it out loud. Practice it. You catch wasted words verbally when it's out loud, audibly, more than when you just read it silently. So from my experience, if I write out my sermon, which I do, and then I read it silently, I don't catch it. And there are so many wasted words in most sermons and in a lot of mine. But that has helped me a lot. And plus, with our church culture with 3 services on Sunday, we don't have much flex time between the services. So I have to do 25 to 30 minutes. And some Sundays it's just 20. So that's part of my preparation is practicing it. But I do write it out word for word. Most people might see that I look at my notes, but they don't. I'm certainly not reading it.
I guess I didn't realize that you said it out loud 4 times before first service. So is part of that to help you memorize it? Because you're a good enough speaker. I think you probably don't have to do that. So you still do that just because it's part of your rhythm or helps you memorize it, or you just feel more prepared? Or tell me more about that, because I'm guessing most pastors don't do that.
Matt, if I do announcements, I practice those out loud. And maybe I'm just insecure. Maybe I don't trust Jesus, which I hope it's certainly not the latter one. But when I'm nervous, the audience is nervous. When I stumble, they stumble. And so, I used to, Matt, I'd practice it on Saturday morning. That's my quote, final copy, and I'd stick the paperclip it into my Bible. I used to, until about maybe 10 years ago, and I've been here 20 years. So 10 years ago, I would practice it twice on Saturday night. And then I'd practice it 2 or 3 times on Sunday morning. So it was the 6th time to say it out loud when I preached it in church. So I've backed off, and now I only practice it 3 or 4 times out loud. And I could say, good grief, I'm an old man and I've done this for decades. I don't have to do that. And maybe I wouldn't, Matt. But the beautiful thing is God speaks to me 5 times. I hear the sermon myself, and it's to my heart 5 times before I even preach it to anybody else. And that brings a level, I think, of more natural authenticity for me. And like I say, people won't care if you read your sermon. I mean, you're actually reading it, or if you rely extensively on your notes, or if you're virtually note-free. As long as you're prepared, confident, and real, because they smell fake from a mile away.
Yeah. No, that's good. I admire you for doing that. I think it's very cool. Well, I want to ask you at least one, you can go further than this if you want to, but on the actual presentation, when you're actually speaking in front of people, Brent, again, I know you very well. I've heard your sermons probably thousands of times by now. You're really good at, I think you do this on purpose. If you're going to talk about something difficult or tense, you frame it with humor usually. if you're going to say something hard, you'll say it and then you'll pause. You'll be your awkward self and be like, you need a hug, or don't send me any emails, or you want to hear a joke. Like I think you're very intentional in how you craft lighthearted moments in the midst of a difficult subject matter. I mean, that's intentional, right? And you learn that over time.
Yeah, and it is an art. And again, that's just me. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's another phrase, be the thermostat, not the thermometer, right? So part of emotional intelligence is recognizing your own emotions and being able to control. So you can say, well, I've got a bad mood inside of me and I want to try and be careful and not let it out. You're recognizing your mood, you're recognizing, and you're controlling it. Level 2 of emotional intelligence is somehow reading the room, okay? And how do you, on a difficult subject, how do you set the temperature? So you don't want to reflect the temperature of anxiety or uncertainty or fear. And so for me, yes, it's just the way I'm wired. By God's grace, I have an ability to walk into some pretty dicey subjects and disarm people. Let them take a breath.
Yeah.
And give them a sense of calmness or trust as I share. But I'm telling you, there's a number of times when I haven't landed that plane very well. What I thought was funny really didn't land at all. But then I'll sometimes say, I'm thinking I won't try this in the next service.
Yeah. But when you try to be funny and you're not, that is inherently funny. So you end up being funny even if you weren't originally. So it's kind of a brilliant communication strategy.
Yeah, it is. But that's, again, this phrase of don't wear Saul's armor. And I listen to a lot of other preachers, and everyone has their style. And the biggest mistake you can make is trying to be someone else.
Yeah. Yep. That's true.
Be comfortable in your own skin. But humor, awkwardness, those are both spiritual gifts of mine. They're not listed in the Bible anywhere, but I'm okay with them being part of who I am.
Yes, you are exhibit A of spiritual awkwardness, but you use it to your advantage, which is good. So one thing I want to ask you about too. So I know some pastors are like when you hear a sermon, it's 100% them. Like they don't really get input from other people. It's just like literally just their thoughts. There's pros and cons to that. Some people are super collaborative, and by the time someone has heard the sermon, maybe 20 people have read it and they've gotten a ton of feedback. How do you land on that spectrum of like, do you get some input from people before you present a topic, or is it mostly your writing? How do you handle that?
I think my preaching would be better if I adjusted things, and I recognize that. So there are many pastors who have both the discipline and the wisdom to meet with 2 or 3 other staff or choose some volunteers from the church, and they actually sit down with them 3 weeks ahead of a sermon and brainstorm on how to be relevant and faithful to the word, which are the 2 things we want. We don't want to compromise the word, but we want to be relevant to our context. I've never done that well. It takes a level of organization that I haven't been disciplined to rise up to. But I do think, Matt, the practical takeaways from my sermon would probably be better if I rallied with a group and we brainstormed for, okay, what are we trying to give them when they walk out the door? What takeaways, what lessons? So I'll take a oops on that one. And you're not trying to confront me, but no. I generally prepare my sermons without a lot of input from others. And there are a few times where I'll walk into someone's office and say, hey, I need help on this. What do you think about this? But as a rule, I just kind of prepare it on my own, and that has its gains and its losses.
Well, that wasn't a trap at all. Sometimes you do ask for feedback on things, or I know you're like you and maybe your executive team might chime in on, especially if it's kind of a hard thing sometimes. But one thing I do admire about you, and I was going to get to this, was when you're framing your year outline, you ask the staff, like, what do you think that our church needs to hear, right? So as you're crafting the long-term series plan, like you do get feedback on that, and you ask for suggestions and ask for ideas. And I think has that been helpful to you? Like,
Yeah, it has. And we have a team, a staff, and so we do have many discussions about a particular series and what we can do. I'll gather people together and say, okay, let's do a series on mental health. And I gain a lot from that. But individual sermons, I'm not as good at rallying people and brainstorming for what are the takeaways. But yeah, we do try hard in our staff to engage people in the process of discerning what do people at Ridgepoint need to hear. And so many years I've emailed our leadership and I've said, what do you think the Lord wants our Ridgepoint family to be taught this year? And then I clarify it. So it's not what you want me to teach.
Yeah,
it's
right.
What do you think? What do you think Ridgepoint needs to hear? And so that kind of group involvement is good.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. You're good at that. A couple more questions about your actual preparation. So do you have go-to commentaries or specific pastors that you kind of keep an eye on? Do you always do a specific Greek and Hebrew study, or what are some of your kind of nitty-gritty? Do you always kind of go to similar things every time, or do you kind of start blank slate every time? What are some of the tools that you use?
Okay, and it's changed throughout the years as much as anything when things have gone digital and the wonderful resources that you can find online. Hands down, resource I use the most, as in I can almost say, I think I can say every single sermon I preach is an app on my phone and on the internet called Logos, and it means word in Greek, and it is a wonderful resource for just getting into the original Hebrew and the original Greek. It really makes you look a little smarter than you are because it's a cheat. And so, yeah, I took Greek in seminary, but that was so long ago. So that program, and pastors all across our nation are going to have different programs. But for me, the biggest resource I use is saying, okay, what's that Hebrew word mean? What's that Greek word mean? And dive into where it's used throughout the Bible. That's been the biggest one I've used. The second one is my friend Google. And I know you know more about analytics and algorithms, and you can keep searching for this and it'll eventually only feed you that stuff. But the second resource I use is Bible. What does Mark 14:3-6 mean?
Yeah.
I just type it in and you get a long list. Okay. But I used to look up on my shelf and find a Mark commentary, and I'd have 3 different commentaries. I'd read all 3. Okay. It's all online. And so there's the Blue Letter Bible, and there's all kinds of resources. But I use the Greek and Hebrew, and then I just go, honestly, I go online. Right now, we're going through Mark, and I'm relying pretty heavily on a particular commentary written by Tim Geddert, a former professor of mine, on the book of Mark. So, yeah, when I do Book of the Bible series, I'll pull a commentary or 2 off my shelf, but online. So those are the resources: Logos, online, and a specific commentary I might have. But it is amazing what's out there.
Yeah. Yep. There's more than ever right now, which is both good and bad. I think it's maybe harder to narrow down the good things, but okay. One of my biggest questions for you, Brent, maybe we can start to wrap up here. You've been preaching for a long time. You've preached, I don't know how many hundreds of sermons. I don't know how many, well, I guess we can count. You've done probably 40 Easters and 40 Christmases, and you've probably done certain books of the Bible more than once. So especially for the things that happen every year or routinely, how do you come up with a new way to talk about Easter or Christmas every year for 4 or 5 weeks? How do you keep that fresh for yourself and then also for the church?
Right. That's a great question. So I'm thankful that it was 15 years at the last church and we're in our 20th year here. And the benefit of becoming part of the lives of the people in the church is just an incredible blessing. But one thing that you can't do is just keep repeating sermons. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean this in a disparaging way, but when a pastor's at this church for 3 or 4 years, and then they're at that one at 3 or 4 or 5 years, and that one at 3 years, it's okay. I would repeat.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you can't plagiarize yourself. I mean, you just keep doing it. And so it's been a bit challenging, but it's good for me. So yeah, I think we've done Philippians twice now this is the 20th year. So I do have some, because people forget my sermons. I forget my sermons. Okay. So that's throughout the year. Easter and Christmas is a challenge here because there is a pressure for it to be good. Those are seasons when people are open and coming, and people expect a decent job and creative. And so, yeah, Matt, it is challenging, but you got to keep digging. Honestly, I will Google Easter series, and you'll have 50 PowerPoint title templates right there, not the template itself, but just pictures with a theme. And I'd pray and I think, Lord, what do we do? And there's a part of me, Matt, that thinks God doesn't have a really strong opinion whether I do Christmas through the angel's eyes or Christmas through Joseph's eyes. I mean, it's the word of God. Just preach it. Okay. Yeah. But we have, Matt, you've been a great gift to our church because on so many Easters and Christmases, when we're sitting around brainstorming and you come up with a good theme. And so, yeah, it is a bit of a challenge, but I tell you, I love Christmas and Easter.
Yeah.
But it's a bit of a challenge.
Do you find that you're able every year when you're getting ready for those ones that come around often, do you personally find new things every time? Like if you're reading the Easter story, you're like, okay, here's a little sentence I never read this way before. Or are you just trying to frame it in a way that maybe the church hasn't thought of before? Because I imagine it's probably good for your own spiritual growth to try to find something new after all these years. Are you able to still do that?
There are aha moments, and you have those too. You've read a Bible story 50 times, and then, I didn't see that. So yeah, there are aha moments, and I admit that for me, and I think for most preachers, when you've done it a long time, you're always grateful when you've got something creative or a new idea that will help keep the church engaged. Sometimes you read out there that our attention span is getting shorter and shorter, and I'm not sure it is. We all can sit through an hour and a half or 2-hour movie, and they have our attention. And so certainly a movie has a greater ability to keep your attention than just a auditory voice. But yeah, you do long for, as communicators, you long for something creative, something funny, something stirring in their heart, a story, an aha moment, so that will catch them and carry them. Yeah. I do believe that with God's help, effective communicators should be able to hold an audience for 20 to 30 minutes, but very few communicators can hold an audience for more than 30 minutes. That's just my opinion. Okay. Yeah. But it's always nice when you have something creative or engaging that will help hold their attention. This past week, we spoke on the 4 soils and the seeds, and normally we think of casting the lifeline of accept Jesus and we have 4 different responses. But I flipped the script and we said, okay, how are you receiving the seed? And people really got that. They noticed that was different. So yeah, to be creative and try to hold their attention is a challenge. Easter is a challenge. Christmas is a challenge, but it's a privilege.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, you do that well, Brent. Okay, maybe last question. I'll get you out on this. Again, we probably have some people listening who maybe younger pastors, newer teachers. How do you deal with criticism and feedback? And are you able to shake it off pretty quickly? Do you get a lot of feedback? Or do most people now just kind of know you and they don't really chime in? Has that grown in your own ministry over time? Or how do you deal with that? And what can people learn from your experience?
Well, they say that pastors need to have the heart of a child and the skin of a rhinoceros. And it's true. We're supposed to shepherd these people with patience. And so you want to have a soft heart, but you just need thick skin. I don't have very thick skin. And so I still am pained when people are disappointed in me. As for sermons, I suspect that it's not 1 out of 12 weeks that someone comes up and usually nicely points out something that they didn't quite agree with. It's never heretical. And so honestly, I don't get nasty emails and you're preaching heresy and that. So usually people say, well, give me an idea that was, kind of birthed in their thoughts as I was preaching and come up and share with me. And my first response is, why didn't you tell me that before the sermon? And they all say, oh, I couldn't have, but I get a lot more negative feedback over strategic decisions in the church than over my preaching.
Okay.
And I don't know how to say this, but this church generally resonates with my style of communication. And so I don't get, it happens, but in terms of people strongly disagreeing with what I've said, a couple, 3 times a year.
Wow. Okay, good.
In terms of them saying, hey, you could have added this, that happens once a month, but it's not a critique of what I said. It's just that their subject is a little more complicated than that, Brent. You need to remember this. Okay. But this isn't the subject of this podcast, but I get a lot more pushback over strategic decisions that I make than over my preaching and people disagreeing with that. Long term, people aren't going to hang around if they're deeply concerned about my preaching. They'll find another church.
Yeah, right. Well, they don't approach you, Brent, because you just rule with such an iron fist, and everyone's so afraid of you that you're just not approachable. That's why. I'm totally kidding. If you don't know Brent,
I was hoping you'd follow that up.
No, not. Okay. Well, Brent, this has been helpful, man. Like again, I've heard a ton of your sermons, but I don't know a lot of your process, so it's been kind of cool for me to hear. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to, or did we cover everything you had prepared?
Yeah, just to say, if there's one thing to a couple things to a young preacher, a young speaker, I would say, especially if you're preaching regularly, you're just starting out, you're teaching the youth group or whatever, or even preaching in a Sunday morning service, you don't have to dump your whole wad at once. Trust the Lord and remember the sacred task. Please remember the sacred task. Invite, and I used to do this, I don't do this as much anymore, but invite feedback for distracting tendencies of always touching your glasses or itching your nose or putting your hand in and out of your pocket 72 times during the sermon, words or phrases that you repeat too often, and be prepared and authentic. Don't wear Saul's armor. It's a privilege, this thing, preaching, but it's a heavy burden too, but it's great.
That's awesome, Brent. Well, thank you for sharing with that today. And I told you this before, Brent, but I've heard almost all of your sermons, usually 3 times. And There are very few people that I think I could do that with. So you're a very gifted speaker. I know Ridgepoint's very blessed by your teaching, and I'm sure a lot of people listening today have been encouraged. So thank you for your time, Brent. I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. It's been a privilege. Thank you.
The January-February issue of the Christian Leader magazine should have arrived in your mailbox. Feature articles in this issue focus on Anabaptism in light of the 500th anniversary of the Anabaptist movement, which began in Zurich, Switzerland in 1525. Request a print copy or view the content online at www.christianleadermag.com.
Well, Pastor Brent, thank you again for being on with us today. It was fun for me to get a peek behind the curtain. I honestly learned a little bit about Brent's processes here during the conversation, and I hope some of his insight was helpful to you. Listening back, I do appreciate that Brent still takes preaching very seriously. I resonate with the sacred task language, and honestly, Brent probably doesn't need to practice his sermon as much as he does every week, but I really appreciate that he does that. He's very committed to his craft. He's committed to preaching accurately, professionally, strategically, and with relevance. And that really is evident when you hear him speak. So, Brent, thanks for all your work and for being on with us today. Now, as we wrap things up, I hope you all are doing well wherever you are listening. Here in Wichita, it is a frozen tundra. It's below zero, lots of snow, very cold. But wherever you are, I hope you're doing well. And I'll look forward to seeing you next time here on Lead Pods.
Thanks for listening to Lead Pods. Make sure you don't miss an episode by subscribing to our show wherever you're listening today. Learn more by visiting usmb.org, and be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We'll see you next time as we learn more practical tools to increase our impact together.